Joining us today is a day that you want to make sure that you're tuned into News Radio WRVA. My name is Rich Herrera. Thanks so much for joining us. Today on the program, we've got a lot to get to this morning. Now, I told you this. Coming up 7 o'clock, I have an exclusive interview with a former CIA case officer. Did the same job that Abigail Spanberger did. So many of you have emailed me since the governor's race, even before the governor was elected, saying, you know what, I don't trust her. She worked for the CIA. There's so many different people, have so many different things to say about her. I get it. But one of the things that I think is dangerous in our times is when we instantly write somebody off and we dehumanize them. So if you say, well, she's a CIA case officer, she can't be trusted. Well, you just dehumanized her. Instead of actually looking at what she's doing and holding her accountable, you just automatically write her off from the jump. That's not fair. And when we do that, then we don't actually get to have real discourse. So here's what we're doing. This gentleman wrote an op-ed piece. He was a longtime Virginian resident, and he wrote about his thoughts when it comes to the governor. I said, great. Can you come on and let me ask you about what it means to be a CIA case officer? You're not James Bond. You're not going in undercover, and you're not fighting this or that or everything else. I don't know enough about what CIA case officers do to make any kind of judgment or opinion known on the radio. So I asked him to come on the show with us, and we're gonna hear from him at 7 o'clock today here on the program. So if you have a friend, and you've often questioned, and I know by our audience that a lot of you have, we're going to go above and beyond, and we're really going to break down what CIA case officers do, what tradecraft is, how they are taught, and the ethics that go along with that great power of being a CIA case officer. That's coming up on the program in just a little bit. You don't want to miss it. So again, tell all your friends that they need to make sure that they tune in today to Richmond's Morning News as we walk through that with you. And then you can have a conversation, a real conversation about what CIA case officers do and what they don't. So that's coming up at 7 o'clock today. Again, you don't want to miss it. Now, big story of the day, big story of the day, playing out throughout the front pages of every newspaper in the country, what happened in the Supreme Court yesterday. So in Louisiana, there are two districts that are majority. I want to make sure I get this right because I've heard it both ways, that are majority minority. Sometimes I get that backwards, which means the preponderance of the people that live there are minorities, either Black, Latino, but it's to make sure that you have some type of representation for minorities in voting. And this comes after Jim Crow, segregation, and the Civil War. And I would think it was an important piece at the time to make sure that everybody got to have a say in who we send to office. So yesterday, the Supreme Court listened to it, and they ruled that you don't have to have majority districts that represent people of color, African Americans, Latinos, and it has thrown everybody into a tizzy. Now, we can have that debate. Do we need to still in this day have districts drawn up specifically to enfranchise minorities? We can have those talks all day long. But I'm going to go a little bit different because we've been talking about disenfranchisement down here in the Commonwealth of Virginia for quite a while. We've been talking about it when it comes to our redistricting maps. And this is one of the things I brought up. I don't think many other people brought this up. I did because I was down at the General Assembly building and I heard A.C. Cordoza talk about this. He pointed out the fact that there are two districts in Virginia that have a majority of the people that live there of people of color. Same way down in Louisiana, you had a district that was represented by people of color. So what happened? Here in Virginia, those no longer exist because of the gerrymandered map. In Louisiana, they no longer will exist because of a Supreme Court ruling. Now, interesting, the hypocrisy of the reaction for both. Dave, if you wouldn't mind queuing up Hakeem Jeffries reacting to the Supreme Court. And again, he pulls his act once again of so-called this, so-called that. You know, he attacked Caroline Leavitt the day that she left on maternity leave. The so-called White House press secretary. No, that's her job. The so-called this, so-called that. So now he's going to try to demean and dehumanize the Supreme Court by calling the so-called Supreme Court. Listen to Hakeem Jeffries and his ranting and raving about losing a majority-minority district in Louisiana.
And now we're at a point where affirmative action is gone, diversity is gone, equity gone, inclusion gone, racial tolerance gone, the Voting Rights Act largely gone. But guess what, extremists? We're still here. That's right. And we're not going anywhere. And we believe in this country. That's right. Not a perfect country.
So that's Hakeem Jeffries ranting and raving, going on, and he had a bunch more. They're calling it a crisis now. So the Supreme Court of the United States rules on Louisiana, and suddenly this is an assault on minority representation. We hear it from Hakeem Jeffries, loud and absolute, urgent. This is awful. But here's the question that nobody has asked that needs to be asked, because it's pretty plain and simple. Where was Hakeem Jeffries when we have two districts that are represented by minorities, that the majority of the people, the preponderance of the people that live in those districts are minorities here in Virginia, and they get wiped out during gerrymandering? Where are you, Hakeem Jeffries, when that happens? Where's the same urgency when the similar districts were changed in Virginia? Same issues, same stakes, but a very different reaction. That's not outrage. That's support. The standard didn't change. Your application did on the Democratic side. Let me explain. If there's truly a threat to democracy and minority representation, why would our redistrict maps that were gerrymandered wipe away two, Hampton Roads and another district that had the majority of the people in that district minorities, to make sure that you had minority representation? If this was such a big deal for Mr. Jeffries and the Democrats, why in these gerrymandered maps that were drawn by the Richmond, north of Richmond, drawn to erase those districts? Those congressional districts are gone, where the majority of the people there were either people of color or African American. They're gone. And Hakeem Jeffries, if you're going to stand and scream about what happened in Louisiana because they wiped away that seat through the Supreme Court, why is it you spent $38 million, Mr. Jeffries, from the Democrats? Why did the Democrats spend $38 million to do the same thing in Virginia, and you called it fairness? You see the hypocrisy? In Louisiana, the Supreme Court says, no, we're not going to have gerrymandered racial districts. We cannot have, we're not going to do these districts anymore that are drawn up by race. And Hakeem Jeffries screams to high heaven, this is awful. This is wrong. This is an attack. Chuck Schumer calls it Jim Crow. Here in Virginia, the Democrats did the same thing. They wiped out two districts that were represented by minorities because the majority of the people lived there were minority. One African American, one coalition, Hispanics and African Americans. Those are two gone. Now both of them are represented by having a majority of white voters in those districts. Don't believe me? If you remember, AC Cordoza came on this program a couple months ago, and I brought this up back then. He was a guest on the show, and I actually have the clip. I got the receipts. We brought it up way back then. Here's AC Cordoza. He was at the General Assembly building. They had a press conference. I attended because I spent a lot of time down in Capitol Square to get the answers for you. Listen to the question I asked him about minority representation in Virginia when it comes to gerrymandering.
Since you're coming out against the maps as they stand now, have you asked, has anybody let you know who exactly drew these maps? Where did they come from? There's some late adjustments that was going through the governor's office in the caboose bill. Who drew these maps? Who made the adjustments? What were the intentions of how these districts are drawn?
And that's a question I would love answered. I'd love to know who drew these maps, because they seem to be drawn for at least two specific people. and which is horrendous of a thing to do, especially when the people of Virginia have overwhelmingly voted for this kind of gerrymandering to not happen in our Commonwealth. Overwhelmingly. So for them to go and try and temporarily, which is, I don't even know the constitutional math of how that works, to temporarily undo a constitutional amendment that was overwhelmingly supported by the people of Virginia, to then disenfranchise voters and then rip apart two minority majority districts in doing that. I would love to know who came out with these maps.
Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats came out with these maps. Not only did they come up with these maps, they spent Hakeem Jeffries' Democratic PAC spent $38 million to help erase those two districts, yet they're screaming and crying, clutching their pearls, and we're upset over the Supreme Court ruling yesterday. So which is it on the left? Is it we love minority majority districts when they benefit us, but in Virginia they didn't, so we'll let them go. The hypocrisy speaks so loud. That's why when it comes to this gerrymandering that we're seeing here in Virginia, this had nothing to do with fairness. This had 100% to do with people north of Richmond trying to control the entire Commonwealth. You want to comment? Please. I love to hear from you this morning. 833-804-1140. 833-804-1140. The number for you to join us. Don't forget, an exclusive interview. CIA case officer will join us coming up at 7 o'clock. Will join us at 7 o'clock here on Richmond's Morning News, and we'll talk about spycraft and his thoughts on the governor of Virginia. All right, today's program brought to you in part by Pearson Signature Dealerships. For almost 50 years, generations have trusted Pearson Signature Dealerships. Why? Pretty simple. They do things right. They do the things that how you really ought to do things. They take care of their customers. They stand by their word. They stand by their vehicles. And they're there for you before, during, and after the sale. How do I know? It's that Pearson promise. That Pearson promise that you walk in, you already know before you even start test driving a car, they've got your back because they offer every new vehicle. They double the engine and transmission warranty on new vehicles. That's right. You don't have to go in there and ask for it. They double it. It's on the wall. They'll tell you right there. You buy a vehicle from us. We believe in you, and we believe in this relationship. We believe in the vehicles we sell will double that engine and transmission warranty. Find out more. See their entire selection of new and previously owned vehicles at buypearson.com. That's buypearson.com.
You know, there's a Jewish woman named Esther that I like to tell you about. Now, she lives in Israel, and she is living through days and nights of nonstop fear, sirens sounding, rockets screaming through the sky, long stretches spent in a bomb shelter. She's 84 years old. She's very fragile. She's alone. There's no help, no food deliveries, no medical care, no one knocking at the door. It is a war zone. But because of people like you, Esther is not alone. Now, thanks to the IFCJ, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, you are giving them the ability to bring food and humanitarian assistance and helping to meet urgent needs and reminding the Jewish people as they fight for their survival, people like Esther, that they are not forgotten. Now, in these times of fear and uncertainty, your compassion brings great hope and help. Don't wait. You can donate over the phone, 888-488-IFCJ, 888-488-IFCJ. Online, it's ifcj.org.
Absolute Exterior Concepts, decks, roofs, additions, and more. Build better. Visit AbsoluteExteriorConcepts.com.
Download to see if you qualify. Not all customers will qualify. Transfer fees may apply. No Albert subscription required. Albert is not a bank. Albert Instant Loans are issued by FinWise Bank, member FDIC. Not an actual client. Terms apply.
Kylie, what's wrong? I just got hit with a car repair bill. I'm behind on rent, and I feel like I can never save any money.
Have you tried the Albert app? Albert is your financial assistant, helping you find ways to save and create custom budgets to actually grow your money. Plus, you can get up to $10,000